Well, the government can't provide all those. We can let the private sector grow, and we can let these jobs come through, so we begin to work on these many areas of rebuilding America. I'd like to turn towards one of my colleagues, one of the prime sponsors of this bill now, to talk more about the issues here, Mr. Tim Walz of Minnesota. And I yield to the gentleman from Minnesota for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, thank you for your energy, your passion, your vision, and all the folks who gathered here. Mr. Speaker, you're witnessing an all-too-rare event in this House, a group of bipartisan legislators coming together and working for the common good, and rejecting the politics of division, rejecting the politics of the false choices, the either-ors, and coming together with the respect and understanding that this nation can innovate, can become energy independent. At the same time, we can protect those vital natural resources. You have a spectrum of folks that come from coal-producing West Virginia, from Pennsylvania, from Indiana, from California, from the plains of Minnesota. You have members here who have a wide spectrum of political beliefs, but you also have folks here who have been in the business of producing energy, and you've got folks speaking who are endorsed by groups like the Sierra Club. Mr. Speaker, this is what the American public is asking for. They're asking for us to get together, use our knowledge, collect information, use that data, come up with a plan that will do the things that you've heard talked about here. The very premise of this is just so simple. This land is your land. The idea that the riches of this land and the natural resources, if we use them wisely, if we take those revenues and reinvest, we can continue to do what we've always done, out-innovate, out moving products to market. We can do it in a way that protects and has the grand, the natural park system that we have in this country. We can have it both ways if we're smart, but it needs to start here. It needs to start with a plan. It makes no sense to anyone I talk to on the plains of southern Minnesota that we're spending over $1 billion a day and sending it to countries that hate us. They will hate us for free. We can keep the money at home, reinvest in the infrastructure, make sure the outdated locks and dams on the Mississippi are up to where they need to be, to quickly move those farm products from the upper Mississippi down to the Gulf and to the markets around the world. Those things can be done. The idea that we're reinvesting royalties, you heard each of our members talk about. This nation needs to make sure we're more efficient. We need to conserve on our energy needs, but to do so takes research. To do so takes investment. We have to upgrade our power grid. We have to make sure we're using smart grid technology and using the software and the technologies available to make sure we're using every bit of energy the most efficiently. We can take these revenues from the sale of the resources that are there, extract it in an environmentally sound manner, and take those back and put them into the research, to the infrastructure, to the ability to move forward. My district, for example, in southern Minnesota, we're very proud. We're the 4th leading producer of wind energy in this nation. You can see the beautiful windmills stretching across there and producing a large amount of our power. But the reality is Minnesota is one of the most coal-dependent states in the Union because of the nature of where it's at. So we simultaneously need to make sure we're doing that in the most efficient, effective, and environmentally sound manner. At the same time, we're being realistic about what our power needs are. This nation and the world will become energy hungry like it's never seen. 50% more energy will need to be produced by 2025. We need to be smart on how we do it. The country that harnesses the innovation, that harnesses the ability to be energy independent, will lead into the future. We can't afford to fall behind. We can't afford to allow the resources we've been blessed with to be squandered and not used and invested for our children's future. So I have to tell you, as this has been being worked on, I think, to me, one of the most reassuring things about our great democracy is how this committee and then this bipartisan energy working group have gotten together outside the constraints of existing politics, outside the constraints of existing committees, and brought members, new members, seasoned members, more liberal members, more conservative members, but with a very clear idea, making sure that we use our resource effectively, we become more energy independent, we diversify our energy portfolio, and we do so without raising a single tax and making sure our infrastructure is modern, making sure it is efficient and effective, and in the long run making us more competitive. So the jobs that will be created by this, the ability to pay down the deficit that will be created by this, the sense of pride that we will have as a nation. President Obama back in March challenged us to reduce our oil imports by 1/3 over the next 10 years. To meet that challenge, there is only one plan sitting on the table right now that has the ability to do that. That is this piece of legislation. So I have to say, it's very gratifying to work on this. I feel very much that the American people are hungry for a bipartisan, common sense, ability to compromise where we need to, the ability to bring the right research to bear, the ability to aspire the American innovative spirit to get there, and to do so with a set outcome. This is real. This isn't talk. This isn't like, oh, we should become energy independent. I hear a lot of people complain about coal all the time. Well, the reality of the matter is, if you're here today and complaining about coal, we need to turn the lights and the microphones off because they're being powered by that. And without another solution to that, we're not going to get any closer to what we'd like to see. Affordable, clean American energy powering our businesses, powering our homes. As the gentleman said, this isn't just an American dream. This could become an American reality, and it could start as soon as we get this thing moved through. So, again, to my colleagues, I thank you for putting the energy and effort into this. I thank the gentleman for continuing to hold us together. I thank him for being ahead of the curve, as this group has been for the past several years, and the American public, we're getting right in lockstep with them what they want to see us do. So I encourage my colleagues, Mr. Speaker, and their constituents to continue to engage on this, to talk to their representative about becoming part of this group. If you're really tired of the bickering and you're really tired about the gridlock and you're really tired about us not spending our money at home on our energy, on our ability to create jobs here, this is your solution. And you've got the spectrum of folks. It isn't a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. So with that, I yield back to the gentleman with great appreciation for the work you're doing.
And I thank the gentleman from Minnesota for his comments. As he was describing the issue about making sure that we clean up our environment, the reason is this bill pays for those things. We know, for example, the waterways just in the Great Lakes alone is a $30 billion problem with regard to pollution that has to be cleaned up. We know that our coal-fired power plants, 40% of them have inadequate or no scrubbers. We need to clean them up. But the point is, shutting them down is not going to reduce the cost of electricity, and it's not going to clean up the environment when those jobs simply go over to other countries where they do manufacturing with little or no pollution controls, and that still comes back over to our nation. And keep in mind, this bill does not raise taxes, doesn't borrow from other countries, and doesn't buy oil from OPEC in it, and doesn't put us more into debt. I'm going to yield to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Schuster, but I first want to yield a minute to another gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Pat Meehan, one of our new colleagues here, to also comment on this bill. Mr. Meehan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise in support of the Infrastructure, Jobs, and Energy Independence Act. And let me first just start with the element of process, because I want to fall off of where, or follow up on where the gentleman from Minnesota was so articulate in explaining. On the merits, we can speak to why this is right for America. But today we're seeing scrutiny of the inability of the Congress to come together for common sense solutions that address the real needs of the American people today, that will help us put people back to work today. And here right before us we have just such a bill, one that enjoys bipartisan support, in which you have leadership from both sides identifying the ability for us to use existing resources, much like the way today we use the tax on the gas. This allows us to generate the revenue to support the creation of a real commitment to infrastructure. As a member of the Transportation Committee, I struggle with the reality of the tremendous challenges we have, from bridges to roads to waterways across the nation. We have an opportunity to address that need. We have an opportunity to do it without having to continue the greatest wealth transfer in the history of America, which is the petrodollars we are sending to foreign nations. It is time for us to join together and support the Infrastructure, Jobs, and Energy Independence Act. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania, and what he is referring to also is cleaning up or taking care of our infrastructure, which has aged so much, and it's just a massive problem. I know it is something that the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee is committed to finding some solutions. One of the great leaders of this is Congressman Bill Schuster of Pennsylvania. I'm proud that he's a colleague from Pennsylvania, and his commitment is a second to none with trying to find some solutions to rebuild America. So I'll yield 5 minutes to the gentleman, my colleague from Pennsylvania, Mr. Schuster.
I thank my friend from Pennsylvania. Thank you for bringing us all together here on the floor this evening to talk about such an important issue and an important bipartisan piece of legislation. H.R. 1861, the Infrastructure, Jobs, and Energy Independence Act, is a bill that's time has come. We came together, Republicans and Democrats, to figure out ways to find the funds without raising taxes to invest in America's infrastructure. And this bill does that, from investing in clean energy, rebuilding America's aging locks, dams, bridges, and roads, creating jobs, which of course all the American people are very focused on how to create jobs, and this bill will do just that. It invests in cleaning up our environment, and it again has one of the largest infrastructure investments in the history of the United States. With this bill we can do that, and again it doesn't raise taxes. By opening up our offshore resources and bringing that energy to bear to make us less energy independent is absolutely critical. And in Pennsylvania, we know firsthand with the Marcellus shale gas play that's there, it gives Pennsylvania a second chance to revitalize our economy in Pennsylvania and once again become one of the driving states in the economy of the United States of America. So we know that firsthand, and it was Pennsylvania 150 years ago with its coal and its oil that was found there that made Pennsylvania so key in the growing and the building up of America. I want to focus on the funding that would go towards transportation. My colleague has a great visual aid up there talking about the needs. Almost $1 trillion we need to invest over the next 15-20 years in our roads and bridges. Aviation, $87 billion. Our dams, which are very much in need. Sewer and water. We have about a $300 billion backlog across this country to rebuild the infrastructure to get rid of sewage waste and make sure we have clean drinking water. $5 billion in inland waterways and locks and dams, which are so critical. This country grew up, became a power because of our waterways and be able to move goods at a very inexpensive rate. We need to revitalize those, to continue to use those waterways that we have natural, but it takes money to rebuild those locks and dams. When you look around America, I think everybody has driven across a pothole or sees a bridge that's crumbling, or many of us live with tremendous congestion, and in fact the congestion is crippling America. It costs American commuters approximately $115 billion a year because of wasted time and fuel, and those numbers continue to rise. 4.8 billion hours per year Americans are stuck in traffic. We have to find out a way to reinvest in the infrastructure of this country. When you talk about trade, how can you talk about trade and increasing trade if you can't figure out how to get those bulldozers, those Caterpillar tractors that are going to be shipped overseas? If you can't get them from Peoria, Illinois to the ports of Philadelphia and the ports of Los Angeles to send them over there, they're going to sit in those yards. We've got to figure out a way how to get commerce not only in foreign markets, but also it's coming into this country, and it's the transportation system that's absolutely vital to that. Today we currently are spending about $40 billion on our transportation system, highways, bridges, transit systems, when we actually should be spending in the federal level about $62 billion. And that number is going down because of the constraints of our budget constraints. So we've got to find new revenues, and the Congressman Murphy's 1861, this plan that we've supported in a bipartisan way, is going to do just that. Get the funds to be able to invest in our infrastructure. That, by the way, when you look back to the Constitution of the United States, a lot of people say, well, government shouldn't be investing in a lot of things, and I agree. There's a lot of things we do in Washington, D.C. we shouldn't be investing in, but transportation is not one of those. From the time of our founding fathers, in Article 1 of the Constitution, it talks about the federal government regulating commerce with foreign nations and among the several states. regulating and encouraging commerce, to build post offices and post roads. The post roads of the 1800s are the highways and byways of today. This nation wouldn't be the great nation it was if we weren't connected. And James Madison, the father of the Constitution, I want to read one of his quotes. "The power of establishing post roads must in every view be a harmless power, and may perhaps be judicious management, become productive of great public conveniency. Nothing which tends to facilitate the intercourse between the states can be deemed unworthy of public care." Madison made that argument. Also, early on in our history, under the Jefferson administration, they authorized the building 100% federal dollars of Route 40, which went from Baltimore into the Ohio Territory. They authorized it under Jefferson, and the construction was completed under Madison, and it opened up the territory, the Ohio Territory, to be able to produce commerce and prosperity to America. So early on in our nation, the Founding Fathers knew the importance of our waterways, of building roads, of connecting this country. And I, on this side of the aisle, can proudly say that it's been a Republican tradition in the United States government, in the United States Congress. Abraham Lincoln built the Transcontinental Railroad not in the middle of a recession, but in the middle of the Great Civil War. He knew how important it was to connect America, to make sure that we moved commerce in an efficient way, in a safe way. And from there, Teddy Roosevelt building the Panama Canal, which connected the two coasts together by water. Extremely important for us to become an international power in commerce and in trade. And then, of course, Eisenhower coming back from World War II, seeing what the Germans did with being able to move their troops around, had the idea that not only would it be good for America's security, but it would be good for America's commerce to connect this country. And that's exactly what he went about doing in the 50s. We built the interstate highway system. And I've talked to many of my colleagues that have said, the roads have been built, we don't need to spend on them, but they're crumbling, they need to be rebuilt. And one of the facts that I think we all ought to remember, it took us 65 years to go from 200 million to 300 million people, and we crossed that threshold about 2005 or 6. It's only going to take us about 30-some years to go from 300 million to 400 million. This nation is going to continue to grow. We've got to be able to move people. We've got to be able to move our products in and out of throughout this country and to the ports to be able to trade globally. So this is something that has to become a national priority, and I believe that this Bill 1861 will help it to become a reality with the funding levels needed to invest in our transportation system, which, again, when you invest in transportation, you can see the return on investment, whether it's economic development or jobs created in the short term from building it, or the long term in the commerce that it produces and the efficiencies that allows our businesses to have. So, again, I thank the gentleman for bringing us together on a bipartisan basis. I would hope more of our members would sign up for this bill so we can push it to the finish line. So thank you again, Mr. Murphy, and I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank my friend from Pennsylvania for his comments and then helping to lay out how we need to rebuild America's infrastructure, clean up our environment, and do this without raising taxes, borrowing, or buying more from OPEC. Also to talk on this issue, another one of the co-sponsors in another Pennsylvania is a gentleman whose district is just north of mine, Mr. Jason Altmeyer. And I yield to Mr. Altmeyer for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania. And, Mr. Speaker, we should do this more often, have a bipartisan discussion on the floor. We have debates. We have bipartisan interaction, but we don't have this type of situation occur very often, where we have members from all across the country, from all political points of view, that have come together in support of a piece of legislation that is going to impact the country. It's going to impact all of our districts. There is no district in the country that is not going to see a positive benefit from the legislation that we are discussing here, H.R. 1861. And when I'm home, I hear from constituents all the time about infrastructure. And in southwestern Pennsylvania, we have 1,000 structurally deficient bridges. We have roads that are in great need of modernization improvement, and we need to invest in our locks and dams. The district that I represent along 2 different rivers in southwestern Pennsylvania has 6 locks and dams that average more than 84 years old, and they're crumbling, and they need help. And we have a discussion every day in this Congress about the importance of federal investment and the wisest use of money and taxpayer funds. I can't think of anything we could be doing in this country that's more important domestically than improving our infrastructure, than repairing our roads and bridges, our locks and dams, our airports. The waterways commerce that's been discussed here tonight means billions of dollars in southwestern Pennsylvania, and it's critically important for the entire country. Our roads and bridges need to be repaired. I talked about the 1,000 bridges in southwestern Pennsylvania. We have 6,000 just in Pennsylvania as a state that are in need of repair. So this bill takes a critical step in answering the fundamental question that we all deal with every day is, well, okay, that's great out here. That's fine. We need to improve our infrastructure. Well, where's the money going to come from? Where are we going to get the funds to do this investment? Hundreds of billions of dollars are required to complete or even make a dent in the work that needs to be done with the infrastructure in this country. How are we going to pay for it? Well, currently we have a Federal Highway Trust Fund that's 18.4 cents per gallon of gas purchased in the country. That trust fund annually runs out of money before the end of the fiscal year. Every year we find ourselves scrambling just to maintain our current infrastructure. And what the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Murphy, has done in introducing H.R. 1861 is come up with an alternative source of revenue that does not include raising taxes. It does not include finding revenue from some other program or transferring funds from some other priority for the country. It increases the amount of money that's available by doing something that I think we all agree we need to do in this country, and that's explore our own domestic resources for energy. Because if there's any issue that I hear about as often or more often than transportation infrastructure, it's energy. It's this country's energy resources, and why aren't we tapping into our own reserves? Why aren't we exploiting the use of coal and natural gas, and in this case offshore drilling, to increase our domestic energy supply? We've had many discussions and will in the future on this floor about the necessity of getting ourselves off of foreign oil, of increasing our domestic energy reserves. And what this legislation does is increase the supply of our own domestic resources, yes, which is critically important, but it then takes the royalties, it takes the money that's generated from that and applies it to our much-needed infrastructure repair. So what does this bill do? This bill expands offshore drilling and uses the permit and royalty revenue to fund infrastructure improvements and clean energy technology. Solar, wind, hydro, the things that everybody in this country wants to support, but there hasn't been the money to maintain and upgrade that technology and do the innovations that are necessary in the future. The revenue goes towards repairing roads, bridges, locks and dams, developing that renewable energy structure as I discussed, developing clean coal technology, something critically important in southwestern Pennsylvania, improving nuclear technology. 20% of the domestic energy supply with electricity comes from the nuclear technologies, and it helps develop alternative fuel vehicles. I hear all the time, the internal combustion engine is a century-old plus technology. Can't we, with all these wonderful things that we've done in this country, can't we find a way to make a car run on something other than gasoline? It seems like something we should have done a long time ago. We haven't done it yet. We're making progress. This bill helps us get there. Whatever that technology may be, whether it be electric, natural gas, some advocate hydrogen, but it does the R&D that's necessary to pursue those technologies. And 10% of the drilling revenues are set aside to pay down the national debt. Nobody can argue with that. So it creates a new pot of money that doesn't exist currently that's going to be used to pay down our debt, to expand our energy resources, and to repair our roads and bridges and our locks and dams. Mr. Speaker, I just can't imagine that there's a more worthwhile piece of legislation and a piece of legislation that impacts everybody in a greater way in this Congress. So I would say to my friend from Pennsylvania, thank you for your leadership on this issue, and to the members from across the country who have spoken here tonight, I hope that is a message not only to this Congress but to the entire country that, yes, we can come together as a Congress. There are things that we agree with on a bipartisan basis, and there are things that we can do to improve the financial situation in this country, to improve our roads and bridges, to get ourselves off of our dependence on foreign oil, to cultivate our own domestic resources, and we are going to get this done. So thank you to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, and I would yield back my time.
I thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania for his support and insight in this. Several of my colleagues have noted that this is a rare moment on the House floor where you actually have people from both sides of the aisle coming together during this special orders hour, Mr. Speaker, and talking about an issue where we have to find agreement. Now, if this was one of those times when we were in disagreement and insults were being hurled back and forth, the galleries behind me, Mr. Speaker, you know, would be filled with the press reporting on this. Probably this special orders won't be reported on much at all because members are actually coming together with a common plan and a common goal to say we recognize we need jobs, we need to clean up our environment, we need to have an energy source, we need to do this without debt, and as my colleague from Pennsylvania just pointed out, this money actually returns money to the Treasury and helps reduce the debt by 1% every year. I might also add the Speaker of the House himself, Mr. John Boehner, talked about this concept of using energy to pay for transportation when he said on September 15th in an address in front of the Economic Club of Washington, D.C., he said the following, and I quote, "I'm not opposed to responsible spending to repair and improve infrastructure, but if we want to do it in a way that truly supports long-term economic growth and job creation, let's link the next highway bill to an expansion of American-made energy production. Removing some of the unnecessary government barriers that prevent our country from utilizing its vast energy resources could create millions of new jobs. There's a natural link between the two. As we develop new sources of American energy, we're going to need modern infrastructure to bring that energy to market." Now, talking more about this bill and issues and how this will help us throughout the nation, I turn to another one of my colleagues from Pennsylvania who's here, Mike Fitzpatrick. And I yield to Mr. Fitzpatrick for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and I thank my friend from Pennsylvania for your leadership on this legislation, and I think you're absolutely right that this is a bipartisan moment here in the House, members from both sides of the aisle coming together around a common goal. Many from Pennsylvania who recognize that this bill, if it becomes law, would be not just great for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but we'll see jobs created in the private sector and will be good for our great nation. And so I rise in support of one of the few bipartisan plans for energy independence, job creation, and infrastructure investment, the bill H.R. 1861. I'm a proud co-sponsor of this legislation because it addresses America's energy problems. It puts in place a plan to start rebuilding our country's aging infrastructure, and most importantly, it creates American jobs. From the gas pump to electric bills, increased energy costs are straining American families and hurting American businesses. The U.S. Energy Information Administration has projected that the cost of heating our homes and offices will undoubtedly rise this winter. Bernard Cranley, Bill Edmonds, and Richard Barkman, constituents of mine from the 8th District of Pennsylvania, have recently contacted me and shared their concerns with these increased costs as winter approaches. In just the last 2 years, families are spending over $2,000 more on fueling their cars. Moreover, the population of the United States continues to soar above 300 million, which means that traffic congestion will only get worse, especially in our area of the northeastern section of the United States. The 2009 Urban Mobility Report finds that traffic congestion in the top 437 urban areas resulted in major choke points and bottlenecks, causing Americans to lose 4.2 billion hours and 2.9 billion gallons of fuel sitting in traffic jams. Congestion hinders our progress in improving air quality, as vehicles caught in stop-and-go traffic emit far more pollutants than they do when operating without frequent braking and acceleration. This means that our energy costs will only continue to rise. The focus in Washington over the last several months has been our nation's $14.8 trillion debt and the growing annual deficit. The current magnitude of our debt crisis has forced us to address these concerns with a renewed sense of urgency. Our national debt is growing at nearly $60,000 per second, and with each second that passes, our children and grandchildren inherit more of this burden. Of course, the issue of our nation's fiscal health and job creation go hand in hand. With unemployment hovering steadily at 9% nationwide and our manufacturing sector waning, the #1 issue at hand now is how to put people back to work. At town hall meetings across the 8th District of Pennsylvania, I've been listening to thousands of people, including small business owners, unemployed workers, families struggling to make ends meet. The consistent message is that Washington must provide certainty and stability before our economy can begin to grow again and start adding new family-sustaining, good-paying jobs. H.R. 1861 provides solutions to these problems in several ways. First, it addresses the need to lower energy costs by authorizing the responsible and environmentally sound leasing of federal lands on the Outer Continental Shelf for oil and gas exploration. The U.S. Department of Interior estimates that we have between 86 billion and 115 billion barrels available off our shores. This is enough oil and gas to replace imports from Venezuela and Saudi Arabia for the next 80 years. In addition to oil and gas exploration, the bill would invest in energy efficiency for our buildings and factories, which waste between 20 and 40% of the energy that they consume, and invest in renewable and alternative energy sources and technologies like responsible wind power, solar, hydrogen fuel cells, and electric vehicles. H.R. 1861 moves us toward energy independence without paying hundreds of dollars per barrel of oil to OPEC and other hostile countries, spending billions daily on importing foreign oil, raising taxes, or increasing our national debt to China and elsewhere. Second, this bill would take billions in proceeds from these drilling leases and directly fund much-needed construction and infrastructure projects. In my home state of Pennsylvania, our infrastructure is in desperate need of repair. We have bridges and roads that date back to the Civil War, and traffic congestion is a daily hassle. There is near unanimous agreement that we must invest in our nation's infrastructure, but the question remains how to pay for it. The President and some Democrats in Congress have suggested that we use taxpayer dollars in the form of a second stimulus package. This bill funds infrastructure investment using private sector dollars, not taxpayer money or borrowed Chinese dollars. This innovative approach will allow for the private sector to help fund our recovery without adding to the deficit. And most importantly, H.R. 1861 would put countless Americans back to work. Offshore oil exploration is estimated to create 1.2 million quality jobs annually. And for every $1 billion invested in our infrastructure, an estimated 30,000 good-paying long-term jobs are created for contractors, for construction workers, engineers, steel workers, building trades, and others. Since the beginning, I've made jobs my top priority, supporting legislation designed to incentivize hiring and create an atmosphere where small businesses will grow. I welcome President Obama's recent entrance into the work already being done by the House of Representatives to address the unacceptably high unemployment rate. It is important that Congress put aside partisan politics and put America back on the track to prosperity. I call on the Senate and the President to pass the jobs bill that the House of Representatives has already passed with bipartisan support. As the Congress debates various methods of economic growth and job creation in the coming weeks, I'm hopeful that we will take an approach which incorporates the common sense outlined in this bill. Doing so will require a spirit of bipartisan cooperation to be successful. It will not be easy, but I will continue to focus my energy on creating a strong American economy and a brighter future for our children and our grandchildren. I yield back, and I thank my friend from Pennsylvania.
I thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania. I know there's a lot of members who want to speak. I'm going to yield 3 minutes here to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Joe Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my esteemed colleague who also serves in the Naval Reserves, and we thank you for your service to our country in that role as well. This is an extraordinary bill that is about jobs, 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 energy independence, a stronger America. It cuts across party lines and solves so many problems that we face, including assisting in bringing our deficit down. It is a common sense piece of legislation that puts the United States first. We have vast energy resources, and we should be utilizing them. Instead of sending $500 billion a year overseas to other countries that, as my friend from Minnesota said, we don't have to pay them to make sure they like us. They'll just not like us without any payment at all. What we need to do is stand up for America. to not worry about whether or not we can keep other countries happy in order to obtain their oil. We need to stand up for America, our own natural gas, our own ethanol, our own biodiesel, our own nuclear, our own wind, our own solar. And in doing that, in all of these areas, you put other people to work. In the steel mills of northern Indiana, where I live, that there are, these mills are pumping out product for the oil patch, they're pumping out product to make the wind turbines. Across the board, you see jobs created in Indiana, but that applies to all 50 states. You have almost $1 trillion for roads and bridges that'll be built throughout our country. And when you look at this, this answers the call when folks say, how can we get America to work together? How can we get America to stand up for itself? This answers the call. People going back to work, the deficit being reduced, manufacturing here in the United States. Across the board, it strengthens our nation. So instead of wondering about how we can move forward, we have an answer as to how to do that. I'm thrilled to be working with my colleagues to work together to strengthen our nation, to reduce our deficit, to make it in America, and to become energy independent. We have enough natural gas in this country, just natural gas alone, to run our vehicles for the next 100 years. If we go across the spectrum, we can create incredible wealth and an incredible future for our nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back my time.
I thank the gentleman from Indiana and I'd like to yield 30 seconds back to the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Walz.
Thank the gentleman. Thank all the speakers today. Mr. Speaker, you just witnessed something, an hour-long discussion on energy policy that did not demonize producers of energy and did not demonize conservation groups, did not point out problems on the other side, and did not become political. It put out solutions, answers, workable, backed by facts, and ready to be implemented. We can do this. The American people deserve us to do exactly this, and I encourage you and everyone in this chamber to get behind this. Thank you, and I yield back to the gentleman.
I thank all the speakers today, and let me wrap up by saying this. Look, in Pennsylvania, we're coal country, we're a natural gas company, we're the headquarters of nuclear, and we recognize we have a responsibility as a nation to take care of our country and be good stewards of our environment. We also have to make sure we are creating jobs in America. But I want to tell you something else. While people are out there criticizing oil, I still believe we can do it better. And one of the things to keep in mind is when we're sending $129 billion in foreign aid every year to OPEC, we're paying for their bridges and their highways. And that OPEC money has a way of finding its way through countries like Iran and using that to fund terrorists who are attacking America, hurting our soldiers and maiming them. I've seen enough of them in the hospitals that I work with in the Navy. And let me tell you, that alone, Mr. Speaker, is reason to pass a bill like this and stop harming our soldiers and our citizens and paying for terrorism. Instead, let's pass the Energy Independence, Infrastructure Jobs and Energy Independence Act. Let's keep our money at home. Let's create jobs. Let's keep America safe. And let's do this right. I thank all the speakers tonight. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the House Republican Conference, I send to the desk a privilege resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 447, resolved that the following named member be and is hereby elected to the following standing committee of the House of Representatives. 1. Committee on Natural Resources, Mr. Amodei.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as a compliment to my colleagues who just left the floor, I'd like to compliment them for the bipartisanship that was shown. And perhaps bipartisanship is becoming in vogue because this is a bipartisan effort as well. It is my firm belief that our nation, while we have some differences on many issues, we do want to unite around issues that are crucial and critical to all of us. I salute what they have done, and I look forward to this hour of bipartisanship as well. I'm honored to be joined today on the floor by my colleague, the Honorable Ted Poe from Texas. He and I have been sponsoring this resolution on domestic violence for some years, since 2005, I believe. And I am honored that he is here with us today. I will be giving a statement, and after my statement, I will yield to my good friend from the state of Texas and the Houston area. Thereafter, we have other members who are present who would, of course, want to weigh in on this subject. But before I do, let me just thank the leadership on both sides of the aisle for making this time available to us. It's important that we have this opportunity to address this issue not only here in Congress, but address it in such a way as to make it clear to our friends and our constituents at home that this is something that's exceedingly important to us, the issue of domestic violence. So, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the time, I thank the leadership for the time, and I thank all of the members who will be appearing today for the time that they will share with us. I'd like to, at this time, present my opening statement. Thereafter, I will yield as I have indicated. Mr. Speaker, there are several federal actions that have been instituted over the past 20 years to combat the issue of domestic violence. I shall highlight some of the many actions that have been taken. Domestic Violence Awareness Month was first observed 22 years ago in the month of October. This month provides an opportunity for our communities to recommit themselves to keeping the victims and the families of domestic violence safe while holding the perpetrators accountable for their actions. I'm honored to say that the Violence Against Women Act of 1994, which was championed by then Senator Joe Biden, has created a new culture for police officers, judges, and those who work in the courthouse to treat this crime as a serious crime that it is, and it is a serious crime. I look forward to supporting the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. And I want to say, by way of a little bit of commentary, that I was a lawyer practicing before we had a change in this culture. And I saw how this culture that existed at that time devastated the lives of many persons who were victims of domestic violence, because there was this thought that this was something that was a family issue, that it was something that people should resolve themselves. They should try to work things out. I thank God that that attitude no longer exists, and that if it does exist in some quarters, we are working to change it. I would also add that the Family Violence Prevention and Services Act supports emergency shelters, crisis intervention programs, and community education about domestic violence. This Congress has done much to try to reach out not only to the victims, but also to the various communities across the length and breadth of the country to make sure that communities are well prepared and equipped to help those in need of some assistance. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act provided law enforcement with the tools it needed to protect families. It specifically included $225 million for violence against women programs and $100 million for programs that are a part of the Victims of Crime Act. These funds will supplement federal dollars so that local providers can retain and hire the personnel to serve victims and hold offenders accountable. We also provided critical funding for law enforcement to keep cops on the street and to support law enforcement programs that services through the Byrne-Brant program. In 2010, 854 local domestic violence programs received stimulus funds from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which allowed them to maintain or create 1,384 jobs. Awareness of domestic violence is growing all over this country, and over the last several decades, the work of many individuals and organizations has created a sea of change in the way we as a society look upon the issue of domestic violence. Police, courts, and the public used to consider it a private family matter, as I indicated previously. Not surprisingly, domestic violence was close to, if not the #1 underreported crime in this country. Today, there is much more awareness, and we have started to pass critical legislation at both the state and federal levels so that we can combat domestic violence properly. We have made a substantial impact on the lives of domestic violence survivors through laws, programs, services, and funding. But our jobs are not yet done. We have seen much progress. However, there is still much more to be done. In the year 2010, a survey was done by the National Network to End Domestic Violence. This survey found that in one day, while more than 70,000 people received help from domestic violence programs, over 9,000 requests for help went unanswered because of a shortage of resources. Many victims continue to suffer in silence, and for many others who do not come forward, there simply are not enough resources available. Victims of domestic violence should have access to medical and legal services, counseling, transitional housing, safety planning, and other supportive services so that they can escape the cycle of abuse. The problem of domestic violence is not confined to any one group of people, but crosses all economic, racial, gender, educational, religious, and societal barriers, and it is sustained too often by societal indifference. Make no mistake about it, when domestic violence occurs, it has a long-term damaging effect, and it has this effect on the victim, but not only the victim, also it leaves a mark on the family of the victim, the friends, and the community at large. In my home state of Texas, according to the Texas Council on Family Violence, and this is a special report, and it indicates that 37 women in Harris County, a county where my district happens to be, 37 women lost their lives due to domestic violence in 2010. 142 women were killed by their intimate partners in 2010. There were 56 occurrences of murder, suicides in Texas in 2010, which often left children without one or both of their parents. 3 17-year-old high school students were murdered in Texas in 2010. 5 pregnant women were murdered in Texas in 2010. No year is a good year for the victims of domestic violence, and 2010 was no exception. The current statistics are staggering. 1 in every 4 women will experience domestic violence during her lifetime. 3 women are killed by an occurrence or former intimate partner each day in America on average. The cost of intimate partner violence exceeds $5.8 billion each year, including $4.1 billion in direct health care expenses. Domestic violence has been estimated to cost employers in the U.S. up to $13 billion annually. Sexual violence is intolerable in our society because it creates a cycle of violence. As many as 15.5 million children witness domestic violence every year in our country. Children who are exposed to this sort of violence are more likely to attempt suicide, abuse drugs, run away from home, engage in teenage prostitution, and commit sexual assault crimes. Men exposed to physical abuse, sexual abuse, and adult domestic violence as children are almost 4 times more likely than other men to have perpetrated domestic violence as adults, according to a large survey that has been reported. This is a call to action. Let us rededicate ourselves to the goal of ending violence against women and helping heal the lives of domestic violence survivors and their families. No one should have to live in fear in their own home, and we must continue to work to eliminate these acts of violence from our society. Nearly 1.3 million women will confront violent acts this year. America's leaders and our nation's families must not let this stand. Let us continue to work to end domestic violence and make every home a safe home. I urge my colleagues to stand with us and support the survivors and their families by supporting the programs that target this insidious ill of domestic violence. At this time, I'm honored to yield to my colleague and friend from Houston, Texas, as much time as he may consume. Mr. Poe.
Thank the gentleman for yielding, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. I appreciate you, Congressman Green. We've known each other a long time. 30 years ago, we both started as young buck lawyers at the Harris County Courthouse in Texas and tried cases against each other, you as a defense lawyer, me as a prosecutor. You continued to work in the defense category until you assumed the role of a judge in Houston, and so it's good to see you again, and appreciate your leadership on this very important issue. Thank you. Some people may not know, but Judge Green and I, we disagree on some political things, but on some basic human rights issues, we are very strong advocates and work together, and I appreciate your civility and ability to work together on important issues such as domestic violence awareness. This is an important issue, Mr. Speaker, and it's good that we recognize the importance of understanding how domestic violence occurs in our country and how we should recognize the important people that are involved as victims of domestic violence. I, too, remember the days when domestic violence was not a case where the police really got involved. Certainly, as a former prosecutor, we never saw those cases. Society's attitude about domestic violence was, it's not our problem, it's not a crime, it's their problem. It should stay in the family situation. Thank goodness, after many, many years of that really philosophy in this country and other countries who still have that philosophy, in the United States, that's not the philosophy of our culture any longer. That in the family situation, spouses have the legal responsibility and the moral responsibility to treat each other with the dignity that they deserve as another human being. The most important person in my life has always been my grandmother. She lived to the age of 99. She told me a lot of things that I understood. She kept in a simple way. Congressman Green, you'd be glad to know that she never forgave me for being a Republican. She actually said, I'm not sure you can go to heaven being a Republican. I think she meant it. That's unfortunate. But anyway, she said something that was true then, many years ago, that's true today. She said, you never hurt somebody you claim you love. And that's true. We should have that attitude in this country. And in family situations, people should not hurt people in that family they claim to love. But that happens. And it happens on a regular basis. Congressman Green's given a bunch of statistics, especially from our home state of Texas, where this dastardly crime behind closed doors occurs every day in the United States. And we as a society cannot tolerate it. And I commend all the various victims' rights groups, the women's groups, who are continuing to make us aware of this problem and how to help solve this problem. You know, the Violence Against Women's Act is something that this Congress needs to reauthorize. The VOCA funding should be reauthorized. Violence Against Crime Act. This legislation started way back with President Reagan. It's a novel idea. Here's why it works, Mr. Speaker. Criminals who go to our federal courts and are convicted of a crime, the federal judge many times will order them to pay into the Crime Victims Fund. That is a fund of money that goes to crime victims. And that fund is important for these services that help these victim service groups throughout the country. I understand that today there's almost $6 billion in the Crime Victims Fund. Now, let's make it clear. This is not taxpayer money. This is money that criminals pay to help the people they've hurt. It's kind of like paying the rent on the courthouse. Make them pay for the crimes they created. And it's a great idea, but every year, and not only under this administration, but previous administrations, we have the same problem with the bureaucrats. They want to take that money that belongs to crime victims and use it for other purposes. And it doesn't belong to other purposes. And it's our duty as members of Congress to make sure that fund is sufficient and the fund goes where it's intended, and that's to crime victims, not for some other purpose, even paying off the debt, because it doesn't come from taxpayers. After spending 22 years in the criminal bench in Houston, hearing felonies, everything from stealing to killing, there were a lot of people who came down to the courthouse other than defendants that didn't want to be there. And many of those were crime victims. But they were picked, many of them, spouses, they were picked by someone who claimed they love them, and they were hurt. Sometimes they didn't have the ability to live through the injuries that they sustained. They were murdered by a spouse. And we cannot tolerate that. That's one of the reasons when I got to Congress, along with Jim Costa from California, bipartisan, we started the Victims' Rights Caucus, a caucus made up of both sides of the aisle to focus on the importance of crime victims and making sure that we take care of them. There were two situations I'd like to mention. We have not far from here, over in Maryland, a wonderful lady by the name of Yvette Cade. Yvette Cade was separated from her husband, and she had gone to represent herself in a court of law in Maryland, and the judge, for some reason, did not extend the restraining order against her spouse that was supposed to stay away from her. And so when that wasn't renewed, she is working in a video store, and her husband comes in the video store with a jar of gasoline and pours that gasoline over Miss Yvette Cade and set her on fire. All caught on video. Thank goodness for some people in the store who did the best they could to rescue her and put out the fire. And she survived that awful attack on her. Now, she's a remarkable woman. She's got a spirit that I just do not understand, even though she was burned over most of her body. And it's a person who claims to love another that caused that crime. And we as a culture need to reach out to people like Yvette Cade, wonderful lady, and make sure that not only they're taken care of, but there are not more of them. Another case was one that I heard back in Houston. It was a little girl. Every day, she was second grader. She would catch the bus to go to school somewhere in Houston. One day, the bus driver pulls up in front of her house, and she would not get off the bus. She would not. She refused to get off the bus. She's hanging on to that seat in front of her, Mr. Speaker. And the bus driver comes back and tells her, says, "Lily, you need to get off the bus. This is your house." And she's crying, refused to get off the bus. And she finally told the bus driver, "I only feel safe when I get on the bus in the morning and during the day, but I'm not safe when I get off the bus." And that's because behind those closed doors, in the silence of horror, she and her mother were assaulted on a daily basis. Thank goodness for that bus driver who intervened, and law enforcement got involved, and the person was prosecuted, mainly for what he did to his wife, Lily's mother. And there's case after case after case that occurs like this. And we need to be constantly aware of this situation, this crime. Understand it's not only a crime but it's a health issue. It's a health issue for Americans, for those people that are hurt behind those closed doors. So I commend the gentleman from Texas, my friend, Mr. Green, and also the gentleman from California, Mr. Costa, the co-sponsor or the co-chairman of the Victims' Rights Caucus, for their leadership on this issue, making sure that we keep Domestic Violence Awareness Month something that we understand and promote and let people know out there in America that we have this tremendous problem. But we're going to stay on top of it and solve this problem. And that's just the way it is. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the gentleman. And at this time, I will yield to Mr. Tim Scott. I believe he has something that should be called to our attention.
For what purpose the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Statement for filing a rule. Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a privileged report from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.